This is TJ with TechmadeEZ. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And what we're going to be talking about today is Linux file managers. And yes, there are multiple file managers in Linux. And why is there multiple file managers? Because Linux is made up of many different GUI desktops. Unlike Windows or the Mac, you have the Mac desktop interface and you have the Windows interface, and that's it. But in Linux, you have multiple GUI interfaces to choose from, like XFCE. You have the Cinnamon desktop. You have KDE Plasma, you have the GNOME desktop. These are just some of them. Now the GNOME desktop itself, I never used the GNOME desktop. It seemed clunky to me, but there's a lot of Linux people that like the GNOME desktop, and there are some distros out there that have made the GNOME desktop very easy to use, more Windows-like. So making it easier, say Zorn OS makes it easy to transition from Windows to Linux using the GNOME desktop. But one of the things about the GNOME desktop is it comes with its own file manager that they programmed for that GUI interface. Just as Cinnamon has their own file manager, and KDE Plasma has their own file manager, XFCE has their own file manager, and there's probably maybe between 15, 20 different GUI desktops for Linux that you can choose from. And so what I didn't realize, I started with Linux Cinnamon, then I moved to Linux Mint XFCE version of Mint. And it came with a different file manager, and I didn't realize when I was using it, I'm going, why is this file manager different? It's because I didn't realize each GUI desktop uses a different file manager that they program for that particular desktop. And these file managers, some are more flexible, more customizable, have more options than others do. And I'm going to preference this really quick because I talk about the GNOME file manager in this presentation, and sometimes when I say the GNOME interface, I'm talking about the GNOME file manager. Sometimes I'm talking about the GNOME interface itself, the GUI interface. And so don't get that confused when you're watching this. So because I'm going to be talking about four main file managers: the GNOME file manager, the XFCE file manager, which uses thunar. Cinnamon's file manager, his name is Nemo, and then KDE Plasma's file manager is Dolphin. Again, there are more file managers in this, but what I'm showing is that there are differences between these file managers, and you may want to swap one of these file managers out to be your default file manager, and how you do that, and can you do that, and how these file managers differ. So basically, if you just started using Linux, or you're thinking about going to Linux, I feel like this is a very helpful, I feel like covering file managers is very helpful, and to know that you're not restricted to the file manager that you're using with that particular distro if you're disappointed with the file manager, or when after you see this presentation and you see that there are other features of the file manager that you would prefer to have over the one that's in your particular distro. So with that being said, and I apologize, I try to keep these videos to less than 30 minutes. This one's going to go over 30 minutes, but there is a lot of information to cover here, and I'm not trying to show everything about the file managers. I'm just trying to show you how one file manager has more flexibility over another file manager, or is easier to use, or has more features than another file manager that you may want in that file manager. So let's get started. Alright, so here I am on a Linux desktop. Now this desktop happens to be KDE Plasma. I'm running PikaOS on this machine, and PikaOS gives you an option of like 4 different GUIs that you can choose from, and I chose KDE Plasma. And along with KDE Plasma, like I'd mentioned, they created their Dolphin file manager, which is on the bottom right here, for managing files in their GUI. But I wanted to show you, now this is the whole thing, is that you can run any of these file managers on any of these GUIs. You don't have to stick with the default file manager. So, but I want to go over these 4. There's more than 4 file managers in Linux. I'm just giving you, I just want to show you options and why I like one over the other, and the interface and so on and so forth. Now the one thing about these file managers, depending on the file manager, will depend too on what kind of options you have available, how customizable or what kind of features it has. And to me, the GNOME file manager is here in the upper left. The thunar file manager is here on the bottom left. Nemo file manager is here on the top right. Dolphin is on the top bottom. I'm going to start with the GNOME file manager. It's my least favorite because it's the least amount customizable. But you can customize the interface here, and you'll see here it's very similar to the file manager home directory in Windows. We have a home directory, then we have our documents, downloads, so on and so forth. Pretty basic, okay? And you can also move these around as well. Your selections here, you can move them around. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, so on and so forth. And some of these become a little bit more flexible in customizing the interface than others. And the GNOME interface here is the most customizable. Now, one thing I do want to cover really quick here. If you've never seen Linux before, you're going to notice here you don't have any drive C, D, or E. Everything is a device, and it gives it a device name. It never gives it a letter. And that is something you have to get used to when you're using Linux. But once you get used to that, it's not that big a deal. But it is at first. So, like, this is a 1 terabyte drive. This is not the drive that the operating system is sitting on, and here's another drive. This is a test system of mine, and so I test different operating systems. A lot of times I like to test systems not in a VM, but on hardware. So this is a test system I have. And so, but you'll notice here that devices, on GNOME it doesn't say devices, but on these others it will separate it into devices. It separates them with these lines here. But so if we go down to thunar here, here's devices, and the file system was right here. So this is the root file system of Linux. My home directory, if I click on this, and it's going to display that it's in the home directory under my username. So just like in Windows, you can have different users, and so those different users would have a different user login and so on and so forth on a single desktop. But it pretty much works the same way. You just have to get used to that there are no drive letters. So when I plug in a thumb drive, it'll just pop up there, and it'll tell me how large the drive is and give me access to it. These interfaces, though, have different capabilities. And so I want to just look at the GNOME interface just for a sec here. So now GNOME does not have any pull-down menus. You'll see pull-down menus, and Dolphin doesn't have them either. Nemo does. And I'm not sure on Dolphin if you can put the pull-down menus up here or not. I'm not a heavy Dolphin user. I have used it in the past. But we'll go into some of the context on Dolphin here in a minute. I want to focus on GNOME though. So in GNOME, to get to some of your options, you click on these 3 dots here. And in here you can do a new window, tab, and so on and so forth. Now I'm not going to show you every single option in these file managers. I'm just showing you how one file manager is more flexible than another file manager. So in here though, if I go into preferences, there's not very many things to change here. In these file managers, you can choose a single click or double click. Now create link, that is a shortcut. I don't know why create links aren't part of the menu. It's default menu system, but it's not. Delete a file permanently is not part of the default menu here. You can turn those on and then they'll show up in your context menus when you're using those, or your right mouse click menu, so on and so forth. And there's some other options here. So just not very many options that you can do here. And so that's really the options that you have. Now I can go here and list view. Now GNOME only gives me 1 or 2 options for displaying my folders and files. One is the icon view, and one is a comprehensive list view, where it'll show the date, items, just like it does here. But it doesn't have a compact view. So if I go down here to thunar, if I go here to view and I say list view, then here is my comprehensive list view. But I can also do a compact view, and it just shows me the folders, kind of what we were seeing before in the icon view. But it's a list instead of just an icon view. So let's go back to icon view. So there isn't much that you can actually edit here. So like if I click on, say, pictures here, and I go to backgrounds and I right mouse click on this, here's my options. They're pretty basic options, okay? And I can go in here, and when we click on this, you'll notice that it's just moved to trash. Well, if I want delete permanently, then like I said, I can go into here, into the preferences, and I can say delete permanently, and I can even hit create link or a shortcut, and now they'll show up in here, create link, and here's delete permanently. I don't know why some file managers make some things default in their context menus and some things not. If there's something that isn't in there, you can turn them on, but it's just that It's just that the GNOME file manager is really limiting on what you can modify in the context menu and other things that you're going to see when I go to these others like thunar, nemo, dolphin. So let's jump down to, I'm going to go back to home here. Let's jump down to thunar for a minute. Now, also too, you cannot edit this toolbar up here. What's on the toolbar is everything that you're going to see here. You can do a lookup, you can create a new one, so on and so forth. So there's very little function here. In fact, if refresh, let's just talk about refresh or reload directory or folder. There's not even a refresh in the pull down menu, but there is a command for it. It's Control R or F5. So if F5, it refreshes the folder that I'm in. Where on thunar, if I go here into view, then I'll have a reload. They call it reload. Sometimes they call it refresh or reload. And that will refresh my screen, Control R, but Control F5 works as well. That's the thing about the GNOME interface. When you start looking for stuff that you're used to using in the Windows File Manager, you're going to find out it's missing some features. And I don't know why they leave some of these features out. But let's just take a look at thunar for a minute, because we're going to talk about some customization here. Before we do that, let's go to pictures here for a minute. And so this here is in icon view. Now I can go here and do list view, and it will give me, actually I'm going to go to a different folder because there's not as much in this other folder and make it a little easier. So if I go to videos here, go to test, you'll notice here, it shows me when I modified it and the size of it. Well, you can, but if you go here and you want to display more column information, you can't do that even in the preferences here. You have to right mouse click on here, go to visible columns. Now you can start turning more column display options on, like when did I create this? Let's turn that on, so on and so forth, which is nice. And so you do have column options that you can turn on and off. But if we go to thunar here, and one thing I do want to show between all these, they all have a home button here, but for whatever reason thunar has home and the username, and they're both the same. They do the same thing, and it shows you the path right here. And when we're up here in these others, it just says home when we're on home. It doesn't show a path. You can click in here and it'll show the path. On all these, you can click inside here and it'll show the path. And so thunar, if you don't want it to show the path, you can go in here to view, and I don't know why thunar, again, it's just the way they do stuff. And I don't know why they just don't have this as home only and why they put the username here. But like I mentioned before at the beginning, when I first started using Linux, I started Linux Cinnamon. Well, the Cinnamon desktop uses the Nemo file manager, but I went from Cinnamon to XFCE. The computer I was using wasn't a very good computer, and it just wasn't very snappy. The Cinnamon GUI interface just wasn't very snappy. So XFCE is very efficient GUI interface for Linux, and so I started using it. And that's when I discovered, well, wait a minute, I don't have the same functions that I had in Nemo. And I'm like, what happened here? It was different. And that's when I discovered that that Linux had the GUI interfaces that they create have different file managers and different applications to manage the GUI, the Linux operating system. And so I went ahead and put Nemo on my XFCE operating system. So, but at any rate, so let's just look at thunar for a minute here. So let's go into list view here. Now, if we go to the list view, we can go to view here, and we can hit list view. There's our list view, and here's our date that we modified it. And it may display things a little differently, but to add more columns to this, you can right mouse click on this, configure column, and then you can choose whatever, like let's just say date created, just like we did before, and so on and so forth. Or I can go into view, and I can say configure columns from here. So it gives you two ways to get to this section here. Not a big deal. And you can move these, you can put these in any order that you want, so on and so forth. So, as far as the columns go, that's where the flexibility stops. There's the other stuff I'm going to start showing you in thunar, Nemo, and Dolphin you cannot do in the GNU interface. Now, one of those things that I'm going to show you here, how do I have access to my file system? Because this is just my home folder. Like in Windows, when you're in your home folder, you don't have access to any of your operating system directories or files. Well, in Linux, it's just they call it file system. I click on file system. Here's all of my folders that make up the Linux operating system, and here's my home folder where we were just at, and here's my username, so on and so forth. But in the GNU interface, how do I get to the root directory? You can't. At least not here. You have to know how to do it. And so if you just click into here, into your navigation bar, then you hit the backslash or the /, hit enter, then it'll bring up your root directory. I don't know why GNOME does it this way. And just so you know, the GNOME file manager, the way GNOME is designed, I think GNOME is designed for you to just use the GNOME file manager. And this is the reason why. In most, and I can't say all of the GUI interfaces, because there are like 15 or 20 different GUI interfaces with Linux, there's usually a section where you can set up what are my default apps. Because maybe you have a default browser and you want it to be a different browser, and you just go in and choose that. Well, File Manager is one of those. So if you don't want to use the File Manager that comes with that GUI interface, and say you install Nemo, then you can choose Nemo in the drop-down for the File Manager default application. So far, I've not found a way to do that with the GNOME interface. And so now you might be able to do that through a command line in Linux to tell it to use a certain file manager as its default. Doesn't mean you can't use a file manager, because here I'm using all 4 of these file managers here. But right now, if I was to go click on certain things, Dolphin would come up and none of these others, because Dolphin right now is my default file manager. And I'm going to show you how to make your file manager your default here in a minute. And again, I don't know how to do that in all the GUI interfaces. You know, there's just way too many, and I don't know all the file managers. I'm just showing you that there are differences. There's another interface called Mate. Mate has their own GUI their own file manager, and I haven't really looked at that one that much because I've never run I looked at Mate when I first started using Linux and said, nah, not for me. So on and so forth. But let's just go ahead and let's continue on here. So now let's go ahead and talk about the views that you have here, because with the GNOME I only have 2 options for viewing. I have my icon view and a detailed list view. But over here I was showing that there are the icon view, the list view, and your compact list view. Now this is the difference. Now this is where we start getting differences between the GNOME and these others, is I can edit this toolbar. And you're going to notice here, and you can do a split screen here. F3 is a screen for split screen. You can do a split screen if you want. And Dolphin, you can have multiple tabs or split screens open as well. Nemo, same thing. But let's go in here for a minute and let's edit our toolbar in thunar, because it's similar to editing in these others. So when I'm in thunar, I can say menu, I can say configure toolbar. Then it gives me all these options, and here's split view. Normally split view isn't on there. I put that on there and I forgot to take it off because I was messing around. But anyway, but we want it to do a zoom in, zoom out. And this is going to become important. We want our icon view and our list view and our compact view. We want those, and we want the reload on the toolbar. So here we have those. So now I have my reload here. And I don't know if you can move these around. I believe in Dolphin you can move these where you want to move them, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But so now, right now I'm in a compact view. But let's just go. Let's go to icons here. Let's go to list view. Let's say I want to make these bigger. Now I can make those bigger. Okay, so over on GNU here, the GNU interface here, I don't know how to make these icons bigger. And maybe there is a way, but I've looked in preferences, right mouse clicking on stuff. I'm just not, I don't know if it has that capability of having different sizes of everything. But this is really nice where you can just do this. Now let me just show you over here with Nemo. Nemo has built in right here. I'm going to go to, now Nemo's default, they already have icon list view here and compact list view here already on the toolbar. So if I go here to list view, I can go ahead and make these bigger just with this right here, so on and so forth. So I don't need to go in and put that on the toolbar. Now I can go in here and I can edit the toolbar if I want. So if I go here to Preferences, I can go to Toolbar and I can start putting stuff on the toolbar here that I want. So if I want the refresh, I just click on it, and now refresh is on there, so on and so forth. So it's real easy. Now computer, I don't normally put the computer on, but I can put the computer there, so on and so forth. New folder, I can put that on if I want. Put a new folder on there, so on and so forth. So I can control show thumbnails. I'm sure I'll put that on. So I can edit my toolbar here just like I could thunar. And I can change the sizes of these. Same thing with Dolphin. If I go in here with Dolphin and I go to configure toolbar, now I can go ahead and put the refresh key on there and the zoom. Oops, passed it. Now Dolphin is the most customizable out of all of these, and so on and so forth. So now I have my refresh here. I can zoom in, zoom out here now, so on and so forth. So that's where these start to become flexible. Now there are other things too. So let's just say we want to go in and rename a file. So I'm going to go in. Let's just go to let's just go to Pictures. Go to Backgrounds, and let's say I want to rename this file. Well, in Windows, one of your options is, and I can't remember now because it's been so long since I used Windows, if you double click on a file, then you can rename it. Or if you hit F2, you can rename it. Well, in the GNU File Manager, you cannot double click on a file to rename it. You can only hit F2 and then rename it. And I personally used to double click rename all the time in Windows. So that was something that I had. And again, Nemo allows you to double click on a file, but it's not the default, so you have to turn that on. So let me go to Pictures in Nemo, and if I double click on this, then I can't rename it, but if I hit F2, it takes me right into it. And that's the other thing I don't like about the GNU interface, is when I hit F2, it brings up a rename dialog box. Well, it's so much easier to just rename it right there on the file. But if I want to double click on that to rename it, then I can go into my preferences. Let's go to Preferences here. So if I go to Behavior and I say click on file name twice to rename it, then it's on. Now while I'm in here, I also want to show you something in here. I want to show you the context menu, because one of the things, again, make link or shortcut is not part of the default context menu. Well, I do create now I don't create a lot of shortcuts. When I first install an operating system, there's about 4 or 5 shortcuts that I create to the desktop. So I like to have that on there. It's not a big deal. There is also too a command, Control Shift allows you to create a shortcut as well. So, but I do like it in my pull down. And so I will activate that here and so on and so forth. And most things are selected in here, even like delete permanently is in here as well. It's automatically on here, so on and so forth. So that's just what I'm showing. So now if I double click on this, now I can rename it. Dolphin does the same thing. You can turn that on through the preferences, and I don't want to go through the preferences, all these. It's going to take a lot of time. I'm just trying to show you that when you first go to Linux, depending on which GUI you're using, well, also it could, if you're a big file manager user, if you use the file managers every now and then, maybe it's not that big a deal, but for me, I use the file manager all the time. I'm copying files, movies, so on and so forth, renaming files all the time because I'm burning, ripping movies, so on. Whatever files I have, I mean, anyway, for whatever reason, you rename files all the time. So that's just, now, let's go back to thunar for a minute though. Thunar, if I want to click twice on a file to edit it, so let's go to Pictures here. There is no double click. You've got to hit the F2 and it brings up a dialog box just like the GNU interface does. And the reason why I don't like that is because a lot of times if I'm ripping a movie and say it's a TV show and I have a lot of and say it rips 20 files and I got to rename them so they show up correctly in Jellyfin or Plex, then I can just have a list and I just use my keys to navigate and rename blah blah blah, blah and do it that way. There are ways in Linux also too to do mass rename updates, and I don't know which one of these file managers can do that. You can do it through the command line. I think you can do that with these, but I have never tried that, doing a batch rename. like if I rip a TV show and there's 20 episodes and I want the episode to be season 1, season 2, season 1, or season 1, episode 1, season 1, episode 2, and rename that, there is a way to do that in Linux, and I haven't worried about it, but you can do that in Linux. You can do those batch renames if you want. And like I said, I haven't even looked to see if you can do that in Dolphin or Nemo. It was never that important for me to do that. Maybe I should have learned how to do it. It would have saved me a lot of time. But at any rate, what you're seeing here is that there is a difference in the flexibility and customization of these file managers. So now, as far as thunar goes, I used thunar just for a little bit when I was running X6CE. When I discovered that I could install Nemo on it, then of course I installed Nemo on it, and I was much happier to have Nemo on there. And then in X6CE I made it my default file manager, so on and so forth. So these are the kind of things that I'm talking about that make a difference in file managers. And I don't know what you need in a file manager to show you the differences and everything that you can do here, because with Dolphin there's so many things that you can set up and so on and so forth. But I really like being able to just adjust the size of all these icons just with a click. I just like that capability of being able to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these back on the home directory for a minute here. So what I want to show you just for a minute here, and I'm debating like how much do I show detailed information about all of this stuff here, because I don't want to overwhelm you, but I do want to let you know that if you have moved to Linux and using a GNOME interface, to know that there is another file manager. If you're frustrated with that one, you can use these others. And any of them. So right now, I used to use Linux Mint Cinnamon. I went from Cinnamon to XFCE, back to Cinnamon. Now I'm using Plasma. And so there is a little bit of difference as how Plasma handles some things, even using the Nemo interface. But one thing I do want to just share with you for just a sec here, and that is, so when I want to connect to a network on any of these that I'm using, if I go here to browse network, and I'll just use Nemo for this one. So here's HopeNAS here. So let's log into this real quick here, and I'm just going to log in, and I'm not going to save this, so I'm going to hit connect, and there's again, it's not going to show it as a letter. It's an SB, it's a Samba share, and Windows uses Samba share too, but it just assigns it as a letter. So you got to kind of get used to that. So here's what's in that folder here that I just connected to. Now, also, you'll see here in here it says HopeNAS. This is how it displays. This is what I call. Now, I don't want to get into this too heavy. I have a video on network shares, and I'll leave a link in there below. Because if you are connecting to a network or a server, you're going to want to understand how to do that. Now, if I do it, this is what I call a soft connect. In other words, when I reboot the computer, this connection will be gone. There's what they call a hard connect, and a hard connect is where you edit a config file and it connects it automatically, and so it looks like, so this is a hard connect right here where it just says HopeNAS. Because the way you do this in Linux is you create a folder to be your basically your network drive. So my HopeNAS is my network drive instead of a drive letter. But it's what I call a hard connect. This one here is a soft connect to my HopeNAS server. Now it's not to the whole HopeNAS server. I just did it to this test directory here. But there is a way without editing a file to make this come up permanently. Okay, so you see how this says bookmark here? If I right mouse click on this and I say add to bookmark, when I reboot the computer, this will be connected as long as I save the credentials. I didn't save the credentials, so it will ask me for the credentials. It'll be there, but it'll ask me for the credentials. And so that is one way to keep that connection. Now, and this is really going beyond um, the file manager itself. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because they do not have bookmarks in the GNOME interface, and I don't know why. They do have a bookmark here with this one, and this one I don't know if there is, and I don't think Dolphin uses bookmarks either. Bookmarks are convenient though if you don't know how to go to the config file and write the command to connect to your network drive automatically. So again, differences, so on and so forth. And also too, and you're going to notice that I connected that, it's showing up in all these file managers here now. So there's this soft network drive that I connected to. Now, but it doesn't show up in Dolphin. Dolphin, when you do a soft connect to a network drive, it doesn't show it. I don't know why. And you can't bookmark it. So if you reboot, it's gone. So you're going to have to go into what they call the F-stab and put your line in there on that it connects. It does a hard connect when you reboot the computer. And just so you know, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here. When you do a hard connect, it is actually faster than a soft connect, but it's only if you're using 5 gig or 10 gig networking cards that you have to worry about that. You don't have to do a hard connect to have performance copying files to a server if you're doing a soft connect in Linux. But if you want performance on a 10 gig networking, you're going to want to do a hard connect. I know I'm kind of getting the weeds here a little bit, but I wanted to talk about that because I don't know why Dolphin and the GNU file manager don't have bookmarks, because they are convenient to use. So I just wanted to show you that there are differences. Now, again, Dolphin, I'm going to go here into pictures, and we'll go ahead and do a list view here. Now, on Dolphin, they also have their list view here, and they have all three, compact and detail. I don't know why, again, GNOME leaves off the compact list like this. But let's just do the detail list. And they display things differently too. So I'm going to go back into this picture one, and let's do our detail list here, so on and so forth. I'm going to make these icons just a hair bigger. Now, me personally, the reason why I like Nemo over Dolphin, even though Dolphin, if Nemo wasn't around, Dolphin would be my default file manager. There's just a few quirky things about Dolphin that I don't like. I'm not going to really go into them because everybody has their quirks about stuff. But I will go into one of them. I just don't like these lines pointing here. And don't get me wrong, in here, if I go to, say, video and click on this here, or let me click on home for a minute, and let's go in list view here. It'll show these arrows here, but it's not broken up into these lines and stuff. Maybe some people like that, but I don't. Maybe you will like that. My wife is using KDE Plasma and uses Dolphin and loves it, and she doesn't have a problem with the way it works, the way it displays things. So yeah, and she's in list view all the time. I just like a cleaner list view. That's all. Just being nitpicky. So even though I said I was only going to do 4, really quick, I do want to show you 2 more, because just like in Windows, when you're trying to copy, say, thousands of files, File Manager is not very efficient at that. These file managers are better at it than the file manager in Linux, but so when I was using Windows, if I was really copying a lot of files, maybe I created a new server, was copying all my files over, so on and so forth, I would use Commander or Win Commander. I can't remember exactly the name of it anymore. It was just way more efficient at copying single files over. And so Linux, same thing. So, but before I show those 2 more file managers, I do want to show you, depending on which distro you're using. And again, I don't know how to do this in GNU to make it your default. You could just have it on you could put it on whatever file manager you decide to do. You can put it on your barcode. You can put it in the menuing system, so on and so forth. But in most of these, they do have default apps that you can change. And so here with default apps, right now it's set on Dolphin. But let's just say now, let's just say I want it to be thunar. So I'll go ahead and make this thunar. Actually, I'm going to make it Krusader. So Krusader is the other one I want to show you. Krusader works like commander, or win commander, I can't remember the name of it, it's been too long. So I'm going to apply this now, and I'll close this. And now over here I have, this is Krusader. It looks and operates really similar to Commander. And again, I might be saying the name wrong in Windows that I use, but I use this if I'm copying, like I just backed up my metadata for Plex the other day and Jellyfin, because I'm managing both of them right now. And so I used this to do it. And just to give you an example, it was going to take about 2 hours to copy all those files over using this. And it was going to take like a couple of days to copy using the GUI interface, these GUI file managers. So if you're copying a whole bunch of files, and it could even be more efficient for you to learn how to do it through the command line, or you could use something like Krusader. Now, I don't like to use Krusader as my daily driver file manager, but again, you know, like you know, every once in a while I will do a new server build. I've got to copy all my video files over. We're talking thousands of files. Then I'll use Krusader for that. Now, a lot of people use Krusader, and there are other ones similar to Krusader on Linux as well. Like I said, there's a lot that you can choose from, so on and so forth. Now, what I'm going to do here too is when you go to install these, all Linux distros have, they all have software centers or software stores. All the software is free in there. It depends on your distro whether you can find these in your GUI software manager. A lot of times you have to install them from the command line. So I'm going to give the command line install. Now I'm just giving the Debian command line install. So I'm not giving the Fedora Arch installs, but you would have to look up the command on how you do that if you're using those. But I'll put those in the description below, because that's basically, I couldn't install any of these through the GUI, through this one here. I believe Linux Mint Cinnamon does allow me to install a few of them, Dolphin including, so on and so forth. So it really depends on your software manager of your distro that you're using, whether you'll have to install them from the GUI or from the terminal. So those will be listed below if you want to try them out, and they're not in your GUI. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch to another desktop here. So right here, this is the Cosmic Desktop File Manager. Now, System 76, PopOS, Cosmic, whatever you want to say, they have rewritten and they were using GNOME as their interface, and it was a modified GNOME interface. They decided to write their own interface, and they also wrote their own file manager. I don't know if this file manager is going to change, but I don't like this file manager at all. I mean, it's not very, again, it's in beta, so I'm not sure what it's going to look like. I haven't really gone, I did go through some of the settings here. Seems like a very, you really can't do much with this file manager as far as customizing it goes. It's really basic. Again, when it's out of beta, I will test it out, but I would rather use the GNOME one than use this one here if I had a choice, like I said. So, and I don't know how the new Cosmic Desktop is going to, how they're going to address this file manager, if this is the final file manager. I just installed it just to see what it was going to look like. I was just curious. So I just wanted to show you that. But at any rate, so I'm just going to go back to this desktop here now. And so if you're new to Linux and maybe you don't, there are things about your file manager, or maybe things you didn't know, that you can go into preferences and settings and turn certain features on. Maybe this is helpful. Go in there, see what's in there. Or if you're on GNOME, maybe you don't want to use the GNOME one, and so you can use these others. This is the whole reason why I'm doing it. I just wanted, Linux is really meant to be flexible. And some GUIs are more flexible than others, some apps are more flexible than others, but I just wanted to show you that there are more options that you have than the one that's built into the GUI interface that you're using. Like I said, I use Nemo as my default manager with Plasma instead of Dolphin. So I hope that was helpful. This is TG with TechmadeEZ. Have a great day. Thanks.
Now that was easy peasy.